Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the third Kinterns shadowing session. Today we're having Eunice Wong and Zoe Clarke from UBC Masters of Occupational Therapy program. So I'm going to hand it over to them and they're going to tell you everything.
Thanks, Leah. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to be hosting the OT session today. My name's Zoe, and with me is Eunice.
Hi, everyone.
So we're really excited to speak with you today about occupational therapy, and we're both really glad that there's so much interest in it because we might be a bit biased, but it's the best profession out there. Alrighty. So before we get started, I thought I would give a little outline for today's presentation. So we'll start off with some introductions so you can get to know Eunice and I a little bit more. And then we'll talk about the application process, I should say. And then we'll talk about what is occupational therapy. We'll be doing a case study. And so I know that Leah shared our presentation in the Google Drive. So just make sure you have it with you so you can follow along and refer to our case study because we'll be asking you some questions. And then we're going to leave some time for a Q&A. So you can ask us any questions about occupational therapy and our experiences.
Okay, thanks, Zoe, for doing the introductions. And like Zoe mentioned, I'm Eunice. I finished with my Bachelor of Science in Biology last year in 2020, and I luckily got into the Occupational Therapy program at UBC right afterwards. So I'm a first-year occupational therapy student at UBC, and a little fun fact about me is that I was lucky enough to go to the Arctic for a field research course in 2019. These are just some pictures I took there in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. Yeah, we actually just stayed at that research station, that picture there too. But my journey to OT actually began in high school, where I had a mentor who was an OT who always shared about all these stories of her work with clients. I just thought it was so meaningful to hear how she could really develop a genuine connection and relationships with her clients. And that's what interested me at first, but at that time, I never considered OT for myself. I was more interested in pharmacy. So I volunteered in pharmacy for a few years, and I found that it was a bit too repetitive for me, and it really lacked the interpersonal connections that I really valued. So I started volunteering at a senior care home, and that's where I really enjoyed talking with the seniors and really just to get to know them and hear their life stories. So I think the turning point for me was in grade 12 when we did a career project, and that's when I first started thinking about OT for myself and realized that my values and OT values just really aligned as well. So that's when I started to search for volunteer opportunities to apply for OT, since you need minimum 70 hours. So I volunteered at Adaptive Gym for individuals with spinal cord injuries. I worked at a day program for adults with developmental disabilities and volunteered at Adaptive Aquatics for long-term care residents, and also taught swimming for kids with autism. So throughout all my volunteering, I realized what I most enjoyed the most was just talking with the people I volunteered for and getting to know them as a whole person. I also learned about the barriers and struggles they face in society because of their different abilities. And that's when I realized I want to support them in any way I can and help advocate for change so they can do the things that they want to do in their life. But I found it the most meaningful to just be able to teach them skills or make adaptations so they can do the things they want to do. So for my adults with developmental disabilities, we always showed them different technology apps on the iPad, and that allowed them to communicate with us even if they were nonverbal. So that was really cool to me. And that's what I really liked about OT, how we always consider someone as a whole person through a holistic approach. We consider their physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being. And it also combines different bits of other professions that are more related, such as PT, nursing, social work, and counseling. So I really enjoyed viewing a person as a whole throughout my experiences, and that's what really drew me to OT.
Alrighty, thanks, Eunice. So I'm very similar to Eunice. I graduated in 2020. I'm a UBC Kin grad. And I'm currently a first year MOT student, so I got into the program right away, luckily. A fun fact about me is that I was on the national team for fencing, super random sport, I know. And then I also really enjoy hiking, and I got into that a little bit over the summer break. And this is the Howe Sound Crest Trail, which was beautiful. I really recommend it. So in terms of how I chose occupational therapy, I debated between OT and PT a lot like kin students. But I volunteered at a physio clinic and I just found it too restrictive. I felt like I had like a capacity just to want to help people in many different ways. So I just realized that physio was focused too much on the physical body and I wanted to look at the whole person. So I was interested in biopsychosocial processes. So kind of drifted away from physio, and in terms of my work experience, I worked as a spin instructor, and I really loved the feeling of helping others become more confident in themselves and push themselves to achieve great things. So I really loved the leadership aspect of my job, and I began preparing for applying to OT by working with children, teens, and adults with developmental disabilities. And I wanted to help them achieve their goals of becoming employed and having fun in the community. Yeah, I realized I wanted to support people in overcoming challenges and achieving their goals and empowering them to be independent and gain new skills. So yeah, and that's when I knew that OT was the perfect fit for me when working with individuals with developmental disabilities and just seeing them succeed and be involved in the community. And we have so many diverse practice settings. We use a holistic approach, as Eunice says, and I combine my love for health, creativity, science, and empowerment. And I love looking at mental health, physical health, and social well-being. We also get to adapt the environment. So the opportunities within occupational therapy are endless in your ability to support others and just be creative. So that's a little bit about why I love OT and why I tried to become an occupational therapist. Yeah, and now we'll move on to the application process. We'll specifically talk about UBC. So what you have to do is a Casper test. I don't know if everybody's familiar, but I'll explain it a little bit. It's kind of an ethical-based test. So it kind of just sees how you react to certain situations and how you would act when there's like an ethical dilemma. So that's a mandatory component for when you're applying. You also do a written response, which is around 250 words, and it'll be asking about you, your experience, and a little bit about occupational therapy. And there you'll need like 3 references, 2 academic, and then 1 volunteer or work reference. And in terms of, you also have to, so for your volunteering or work, you have to have a maximum of 2 facilities and working with people with disabilities. So it can be a cognitive disability, emotional, or physical disability, and you have to have 70 hours of that experience. And you're gonna have to give out your transcript for your whole university career. So, and you'll have to have a minimum of a B+ average or a 76 or above for all your senior level courses. So that's like your 3rd and 4th year. And your competitive GPA for UBC is around 84%. So that's something to consider. And then you have to do some prerequisites as well. So human anatomy, social sciences, psychology, and those are just for completion. So, and we will definitely talk more about the application process, and we'll answer more questions when it comes to it at the end. And yeah, so that's a little bit of a brief overview. Yeah. So now I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is OT. And we wanted to give you an introduction by doing this short little video. It's about 2 minutes long, and it'll kind of just get you understanding about what occupational therapy is all about, because I know it's a little bit confusing even for us to explain occupational therapy as professionals. So this is a great video to kind of give you an introduction, and I'll let Eunice hit play on that.
When your health changes, it can feel like you are always waiting on the next medical professional, the next symptom to emerge, the next treatment to begin. It can feel like you are always waiting for the next thing to happen to you. But at the core of occupational therapy, we believe that no matter what comes your way, whether it's an illness, an injury, or disability, you and your loved ones still have the power to influence your health in the ways that matter to you. Occupational therapists know that a vital part of healing is staying involved with the life you have worked so hard to build. And that means finding ways to engage in the activities you love and to spend time with the people that you love. We know that even when your health has changed, you are still a mother, a driver, a teacher, an engineer, an athlete. We work with you and your loved ones to help you heal, to help you get stronger. And when it's necessary, we help you choose the best technology and equipment to help you stay involved. That's because occupational therapy is all about keeping you at the heart of the matter. We work with you and your loved ones to help you live a life you love. To learn more about occupational therapy, visit otpotential.com. When your health changes, when your health
So that was a little introduction for you. I recommend to look back at that video and reflect on it. Yeah, and so I'll go a little bit more in depth and try to explain occupational therapy for you. Yeah, so at the essence, OTs help people do things that are important to them. And we help enhance participation in daily activities. So these are things that are related to self-care, such as washing, eating, dressing, toileting, productivity, which includes school and work, leisure, which can include running, socializing, gardening, playing guitar, anything you like to do in your free time. And so those are kind of the activities that we look at. Anything and everything that you do in a day, we can help you through that. And we also find creative solutions through changing the environment, utilizing adaptive equipment, and focusing on developing a person's skills. So we can kind of focus on those three areas in terms of helping people overcome their illness, injury, or disability. And we may use all of them at the same time. We may use one principle or two. So those are kind of the things that we would do for our interventions. And OTs are really cool because we can work in many different areas. So this includes hospitals, private clinics, schools, home and community. So OTs can work anywhere, which is really amazing. Okay, so now we've come to the case study. Eunice and I worked so hard on this, and I'll let her take it away.
Yeah, so now that you know a bit more about OT, let's apply that to the case study that Zoe mentioned. So let's imagine you had a client named Regina George, and her pronouns are she and her, and she's 20 years old, and she was referred to you because she was in a car accident where she had a displaced radius fracture of her left hand and a concussion. So she has to wear a cast on her left hand for 6 to 8 weeks and be non-weight bearing. And what that means is that she cannot put any weight on her left hand, so she can't lift any heavy objects, can't support her body with her left hand, basically can't do any heavy physical activity with her left hand for 6 to 8 weeks. However, she's also left hand dominant, so that makes things a bit more complicated. And like Zoe mentioned earlier, her productivity activities include being a full-time kin student, doing online Zoom classes, I'm sure like most of you are, and working part-time as a server and also cooking. And her leisure activities include playing tennis on the university tennis team and watching Bachelor with her friends and walking her dog. So given this case study, we're going to provide you with some questions for you to attempt to answer to help guide you through what an OT might do in this client case. So we'll keep these questions for you to view, so you can refer back to the slide number 8 on your downloaded package to see the case study.
Yeah, so the first question is, what activities will Regina have trouble with given her left hand fracture? So you can feel, oh yeah, go ahead, Eunice.
You can feel free to answer in the chat box.
Lots of answers coming in here, rapid fire. Keep them rolling in here. And we'll give you some answers after as well, what our thoughts are. I see writing and typing, cooking, brushing teeth. I love how someone said everything. Anything could be a challenge.
Yeah.
Tennis, yeah, that's gonna be difficult. Working as a server. Focusing in class from her concussion. Yes. They love typing. Using the TV remote. Yes. Might have to use the other hand. Watching TV from the concussion. Daily activities. I like these answers. Alrighty. Should we move on to the next one? What do you think, Eunice? Oh no, is Eunice frozen? Oh no.
Sorry, I think I dropped a little bit, but I'm back.
Okay, good. I think we're just thinking about moving on to the next question.
Okay. Yeah, that was really great. I think you all touched on basically pretty much all the aspects Zoe and I thought she would have troubles with given her left hand fracture as well. So we're going to go over some symptoms of concussion. That's great. I see an answer already. Yes, definitely dizziness, feeling sick, memory loss, nausea. I like how you mentioned anxiety as well. Often concussion isn't just the physical symptoms, but also the mental health concerns as well. It seems like you all did some homework before coming here. I'm pretty impressed with all the answers. Zoe and I actually just learned about concussions this week too. So you guys know just as much as we do. Yeah, I think generally with concussion symptoms, like you all mentioned, the sensitivity to light and noise, trouble sleeping, dizziness, nausea, headache, difficulty paying attention, especially to like Zoom classes. And yeah, like someone else mentioned, more mood swings, anxiety or depression as well. Zoe, you gonna move on to the next question?
Yeah. So number 3 is, how will her concussion impact her participation in occupations? So yeah, so you can think about that a little bit. I know some people mentioned it a little bit for number 1, but yeah, so I love all these answers. Her occupation as a student will be affected. Yes, productivity is impacted. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Difficulty focusing, maybe difficult in serving in a class setting. Yes. Her abilities in leisure, playing tennis. Yes, because of her concussion, it's going to be, she's probably going to have to do a graded return to activity, and she can't just jump back into tennis. Yeah, I'm taking time off from tennis. Yes. So it would be her productivity occupations, which include school and work, and then her leisure occupations, which included tennis. So that's what we are kind of looking for. Yeah, work, yeah, occupations. That means, yeah, all the things that kind of it's not even the activities. Occupations are like productivity, leisure, self-care, those things. Yeah, no more Bachelor. Yes. What is she gonna do? I know, she's got to take a break from Bachelor. She's got to get a recap from her friends or make them wait for her. Yeah, those are great answers.
All right, our last question is considering her left hand distal fracture, and how do you think we could help Regina with her cooking, considering she lives alone and that she can't put any weight on her left hand? Helping with meal prep is a great idea, and helping with pain management first too. And yes, having friends, enlisting her social support network. Oh, shoulder wheel. Yeah, I like the idea of having adaptive equipment or adapting her environment to suit her needs, and possibly getting meals to go or meal prepped frozen dinners just heat up easily without the use of her left hand much. Okay, I think we have really great answers for hooking interventions. Seems like we're all on the right track in thinking to get her social network to help, and just adapt her environment as well, and helping her use her right hand more to help with cooking. Yeah, okay, so thanks for answering all those questions, everyone. It seems like you all prepared well ahead of time thinking about this, clearly from the depth of your answers. So Zoe and I will just go over some answers that we thought an OT would do in in this situation. So as OTs, we always start with an initial interview, and this interview is used to get to know Regina more as a person and know what a typical day looks like for her. And if there's anyone in her life who can support her, and also see her home layout. And this is actually really important because as OTs, we're always considering how the environment impacts someone's ability to participate in their occupations, and knowing what the environment looks like would enable us to give her adaptations if she needs any. And during interview, we also observe her overall presentation, so like her nonverbal cues as well. We look at whether or not she has insights and judgment, any signs of concussion, and also signs of mental health concerns. So things like depression or anxiety. And if we do notice these concerns, we can refer her to the professionals that she might need. And after the interview, we often do assessments to determine her goals, because as OTs, we want to make sure we keep the client at the center and help them do the things that are important to them and not just things that we want for them. So things that we could do for assessments are functional assessments. And this just means seeing how she's doing in her daily activities. So things like dressing or making toast or tea. And from this functional assessment, we can see what areas she's struggling more with and how we can help her overcome those challenges. And we can also do the Rivermead concussion screen. So this just sees how she's doing with symptoms of concussion. She ranks her symptoms on a scale of 1 to 5, and this determines the severity of her concussion, and that helps us see what treatments she might need. And following up on our last question on interventions, I think you all gave really good answers for cooking. I'll just summarize what we talked about before already. So I think lots of you mentioned teaching her one-handed cooking techniques, and that's something that's right on track, what OTs would do. We could also give her adaptive equipment, such as this cutting board over here. It's a one-handed cutting board. It's really cool. It basically clamps the food item on one side so that you can chop with the other hand, and you don't need to hold onto the food with the left hand. And like lots of you mentioned too, asking her friends to see if they can help meal prep, like cooking frozen dinners for her, and she can just heat up in the microwave, or even doing meal deliveries, like skip the dishes or Uber Eats. Although that might be more expensive, but if it's just for 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully that is okay for her to do as well.
All right. And in terms of serving, we had a lot of great suggestions. But we were thinking of gradual return to work, which I think somebody mentioned, and working as a hostess in the interim. So she could do that because she maybe will have some trouble carrying plates or carrying drinks to tables. So that's something to consider. And we were looking at for concussion. So for online school, everybody really got this one, very impressed. So her sensitivity to the light is going to be an issue, and she'll need to take more breaks. So ideally, there's no screen time, but with online school, that's a challenge. So she'll need to take breaks, as people mentioned, to avoid the recurrence of her symptoms. And then she can gradually increase screen time. She can ask her friends to send her notes as well. And she can also print the slides and write out her notes. And she could just listen to the lecture instead of watching over Zoom. And yeah, I think those are, everybody gave great suggestions, and all of them were very OT related. So good job.
Yeah, and after the interventions we provide to her, we always want to reevaluate her goals, make sure that what we're doing is actually helping her achieve what she wants to do. And maybe her goals have changed throughout the time we're with her, and that's okay. We can always readjust her goals and readjust our interventions to make sure we're always doing things that she wants to do. And if the interventions aren't working, we can always adjust them so that they're actually helping her meet her goals. And once Regina feels like she has reached her goals and her cast is coming off as well in 6 to 8 weeks, we can always discharge her from our caseload, and that's when we would be able to receive a new client and let her be in a society and functioning independently.
Yeah.
So now we've come to the end of our presentations, and it's time for questions. And you can ask us anything that we talked about, the application process, our experiences in OT school, or more about a case study, or just anything you want. And here's some occupational therapy memes that we thought were really fun, and hope you enjoy them as well. And to ask questions, you can feel free to type them into the chat box, or if you're comfortable, you can also turn on your video or mute yourself and just ask the question as well.
Okay, we have one question here. What similarities are there with PT and OT? So I knew this question was going to come up. So is it okay if I answer this one, Eunice?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
Okay. So there are similarities, and PTs and OTs are like cousins. They do work together a lot. But PTs do, I think I'm going to say what's different about them before I say what makes them alike. So PTs focus more on the physical body. They focus on ambulation, which is helping people move when they're recovering from an injury or disability, and I guess OTs focus a little bit broader than that on kind of more occupations related to self-care. If it was the hospital, for example, more focusing on feeding, dressing, going to the bathroom, showering. So getting back to being independent in those things. And so where we align, I would say in terms of mobility and ambulation, which is movement related things, OTs can give out gait aids, which are things like walkers or wheelchairs or canes. And we can teach people how to use those just like a physiotherapist would. So yeah, we would help out in that way, if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, there's lots of questions coming in. The next one was, they'll be someone's starting in UBC OT program September. Congratulations on getting in. Yeah, you should be proud of yourself. It's really hard work to get in, so that's really great. And is there anything you wish you knew before going into OT, or things that I should know? I can take that question if you want, Zoe. I thought you gave a really good answer about PT and OTs. So I think the biggest thing for me that I wanted to know is that I know in undergrad, it's there's a whole pressure to get high grades, especially, 84%, that's really high. We always have to work really hard and care a lot about the marks we get in every single assignment. And I understand that. But when you're in OT, you already made it to the program. There's no need to stress over your grades anymore. And that's the biggest challenge I found. I think I speak for Zoe and my whole class too, where we're so used to working super hard, trying so hard in everything. But when you're in OT, there's no competition. We're all going to be OTs in the end, and really just relax. Profs tell us all the time, like, chill out, don't worry about exam. Like, the worst thing happen is that you fail. And if you fail, you just retake the exam. There's no serious consequence to it. You just do it over again until you pass. Of course, I'm not saying don't try an OT school, because I think we all have the personality that we would all try our best. But don't worry too much about your grades, because the more important thing is that you learn the skills to be an OT. And the learning process is more important than the actual mark you get, because it does not define what kind of OT you will be in the future. In practical placements, we do lots of clinical placements. That's where you learn all the hands-on skills. And that's where you really refine your skills to be an OT.
That was so well answered, Eunice. Oh my gosh. Everything you said.
I'm sorry.
I said everything you said. Ditto.
Yes. I know that might have been a more non-traditional answer that you might have been expecting. Maybe you thought more like academic advice, but really take the summer off, like relax. It's an intense 2 years. It's going to be really busy, and what you study over in the summer likely wouldn't be exactly what you learn in the school term and different timelines as well. So just take the summer off, like, don't worry.
So true. It's so true. Okay, the next question. How difficult was it to get into UBC MOT? This is a good question. I would say getting into any school is difficult. If you're within the competitive average and you have really great work or volunteer experience, you should be able to get an interview, and then, at the interview, it's more about looking at your personality and just seeing who you are as a person. So if you're very, very passionate about the field of occupational therapy and supporting others and achieving their goals, and, you're very passionate and you're communicating that, then, it won't be difficult for you to get into UBC MOT, but the whole application process is very difficult and fatiguing. So I'm sure like Anika, who's going in, she knows the experience, but yeah, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort to, in this application process, and you just got to show your best self, and, you're going to do great. And there's some people who have like reapplied. We were lucky enough to get in the first try. Like, I'll be very candid that, I was on the wait list, but then I got in. But I've known people who had to try 3 times, and there's only 3 times to get into the program. So, you just have to persevere. And, if you love occupational therapy and like you want to be in the field, you're going to get there. So no matter how difficult it is, but, you're going to do it. Everybody can get in, if you're passionate enough.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I echo Zoe as well. The passion is the most important part. That's what they look for the most in interviews, I've been hearing too. So just be yourself. My next question was, can you give us examples of some of the classes you're taking? What kind of stuff are you learning? That's a great question. So in term 1, we learned a lot more about the theories of occupational therapy to start with the foundation of where you're coming from. And I think that was really interesting on my personal experience. I don't know about Zoe, but I thought it was, we all felt our minds just shift towards the lens of occupational therapy, because it takes a different kind of viewpoint to look through life, to consider like occupations and looking at the environment and how it affects someone's ability to do something. And I think through learning through the theories of occupational therapy, I really felt myself seeing the world differently and seeing the world through the eyes of an occupational therapist, like seeing that like, oh, maybe someone could have benefited from like a better suited wheelchair if I see that they're struggling wheeling themselves on the streets, or just noticing the self-care, productivity, and leisure activities, and just how much these things define a person, and how seemingly mundane tasks like being able to cut your food by yourself or brushing your teeth, like these are really vital tasks and actually hold a lot of value to people if they can't do these things by themselves. And we also learn about practical skills, so conducting the initial interviews like I mentioned, and also things like how to transfer someone from a wheelchair to a bed or vice versa, and how to test for range of motion. So how, and that's where it overlaps with PT, because I know PTs also do this, range of motion and testing for muscles. So OTs do that as well. We measure using something called a goniometer. It's like a fancy protractor, and we just measure how much they can move their joints, testing their muscle strength. So those were the more practical labs. We also talk a lot about like professional development as an OT. And this term, we learned about splinting, which was very interesting. It's quite difficult, so I admire any person who makes splints. Oh, great, Zoe, wow, you brought it too.
I had mine in my drawer. So I think I got a decent grade on this one. But it was contoured to my partner's hand. And yes, she has a very small hand. Like this is very tiny. But yeah, we got to make these. It was kind of like a really intense version of arts and crafts, because we only had one flat sheet to use. And we had to make it. But it was really fun. I love this one. Splinting was cool.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that along, Zoe. I should have taken mine too. But yeah, and then right now we're learning about neurocognitive rehabilitation. So how to help individuals with brain injuries or concussions or any other neurocognitive disabilities to relearn skills to help them do the things they need to do in life. And also rehab skills for children with ASD or cerebral palsy or other developmental concerns. And then we're going to be learning about mental health and psychosocial rehabilitation in the next module. So things like group therapy, like CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy. And we also learn a lot about like medical conditions. So things like spinal cord injuries, mental health illnesses, traumatic brain injuries, just a whole wide range of medical conditions that you might face as an OT. Yeah, we get a lot of guest speakers come in who are actually experts in the field. So that's really cool because we get to learn from the best. And we also have people with lived experiences come in to speak with us. And that's probably the most meaningful parts of the program, I would say. I don't know about Zoe, but it's really impactful to be able to hear stories from people who actually experience these conditions and see how it actually impacts their life. And it really makes you realize just how much of an impact you can make as an OT and what kind of mindsets and perspectives you should be coming from. I hope that gives an overview of what we learned so far.
All of our courses are amazing and they're so cool. So yeah.
And there's also the capstone project at the end, the massive 15-month research project, which is actually really exciting because you do hands-on research, you could get published in a paper, you work with profs, like top-notch profs in the field of OT.
Yeah, as a kid, definitely the learning about all the medical conditions is really cool. It kind of feels like you're like a doctor almost too, because you like kind of know about the medical conditions and you learn about it. So as a kid, I think that was really exciting to learn about the medical conditions. But we are not doctors. I'm sorry. I don't want to get people confused. It's our scope, occupation. Okay, next question here. You mentioned some types of volunteer work, 70 hours. Yeah, emotional and cognitive ones. Could you elaborate on these? Okay, yes, I can for sure. So emotional disabilities, I think they are referring to more like maybe people with mental illness. I think that's what they're kind of referring to. Cognitive disabilities, that can include, let me think, people with Down syndrome, and what else? People with cognitive disabilities. I'm just thinking, Eunice, can you think of for cognition, like cognitive disabilities? I'm just thinking.
I'm just thinking more like if people have experienced like a brain injury or stroke.
Yeah.
Their ability.
Yeah. So that's kind of what they're looking for. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Then you just can go ahead with the next question.
Did you get involved with research during undergrad, or would you say having research experience is an asset? I would say definitely it would be an asset just because we do the 15-month long capstone project, and we're currently taking a research methods course right now. And I find that coming from a biology background, I took a lot of courses that had research projects, but I never volunteered in an actual research lab, if that's what you're wondering. It was just purely research-based courses, and I think that really helped give a foundation on like what's good sampling practices, like why is evidence-based practice so important, because that's a huge part of OT. There's a misconception that OTs just kind of do like common sense work, or like the interventions we provide aren't really based on evidence, but it is, and being able to know what good research looks like and what good research methodology is really helps you know how to critique papers and critique the evidence base of like interventions you're giving to clients. But I would emphasize that our class is very diverse. There's people with like fine arts background, people who come from like business backgrounds who don't have as much research experience, which is totally okay. Like we all learn together and support each other.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this next question, do you have any suggestions or ideas for volunteering in these areas during the pandemic? Oh my gosh, I empathize with you all so much. The pandemic definitely has put a damper on volunteering and work experience, but I think telehealth is an emerging field. So I'm sure you're all very proficient in Zoom, using Zoom. So I'm hoping that there's lots of volunteering or work opportunities through Zoom. I know that my workplace, I was working with individuals with developmental disabilities, and they were able to move our entire program online. So I would just keep looking things up online and, just trying to offer, your services, whatever you can. But yeah, online is probably the way to go during this time. Yeah, and I guess the next question for Eunice.
I think to add to the previous question, Zoe, I actually know a lot of places who still have in-person volunteering. Like I know BCH has a lot of volunteer opportunities I always see. Even the places that I worked at for developmental disabilities, they still have in-person programs. So I think just searching in like health authorities, yeah, because there are in-person programs running still. It's just you need to use masks and PPE. That's appropriate. But I recognize it might be more difficult to find those, or the comfort level of doing that is also compromised.
Definitely.
Next question. Yeah. How have your placements been? So Zoe and I think we're both in acute care in a hospital. I was on an orthopedic trauma unit. So that means people with bone fractures, bone surgeries, or people who suffered from traumatic injuries. So injuries that are affecting more than one body system. So for example, like a brain injury plus a bone fracture, that would be a traumatic injury. It was a very interesting learning experience. I got to see a lot in a hospital setting. I also learned a lot about just gaps in the healthcare systems where sometimes patients don't get to receive the care they need because of lack of funding or services. But I got to apply hands-on skills I learned in first term in my placements. That was really cool. And it's so different in first term when you're doing all these interviews and transfers with like your classmates, but doing it with an actual patient is a whole different story. And I think Zoe must feel the same way. Like it was just so different doing it with a patient, but it's a huge learning experience. And it really helps you open your eyes to the things that people go through in life, and really help me empathize more with what's going on and be more aware that there are all these issues that we often don't get to see because we come from a privileged background as well. How about Zoe? You should share about your experience too.
Sure, I'll do a little quick overview, but I was at St. Paul's Hospital in January, and I'm sure you saw from the news that there were outbreaks. So that was very interesting. Yeah, you definitely wear a lot of PPE. Like I am the PPE master now. Like I know how to don and doff my PPE like no one else. So if anyone needs help, let me know. Yeah, so it was a little bit like, it was definitely challenging during COVID. But I learned so much, and I worked with people who were substance users and homeless. So I'm from North Van, so I have a North Van bubble, and so it was really good to experience being at St. Paul's and working with that population, because they have lots of complex issues and very different backgrounds from mine, and different health challenges. So it was incredibly rewarding. I loved acute care. And I learned so much medical terminology. I got to participate in rounds where there's like doctors and social workers and nurses, and we all talked together. Yeah, and just talking to patients was just so amazing, and just seeing them become more independent and get out of the hospital when they were feeling better. It was great. So I love placement. It's my favorite part almost. Yeah. And oh yeah, for the next question. Let's see. Okay, kin degree. Yes, kin degree helped me for sure. So kinners, you're well prepared for OT, especially for anatomy. We got neuroanatomy and medical conditions. So there's some people who don't have that background. So, you definitely feel very comfortable in those sessions. Yeah, and my kin experience benefited me. Yeah, I would say so. I prepared me with all those medical conditions, and just knowing about the human body and movement. And yeah, it really helped prepare me. I loved kin. It was great.
Yeah, I can definitely see how kin will benefit, because I my muscle knowledge isn't as in-depth or extensive as all the kin students in my class, but that's okay. And the next question was, have you ever confused between choosing pediatric, geriatric, or psychosocial? That's a really great question. I think in terms of practice areas, I personally am not too sure where I want to work in, just because I only had one placement so far. So I've only seen acute care among adults. I've worked with children before, and just knowing the scope of what OTs do with children, it's very different. It's a much more specialized field. OTs have to work a lot more with the whole family than just the children. I know it's common to think that OTs just play games with children or get to have fun with them, but you have to really be able to navigate the whole family as well. And sometimes that's hard because parents' wants for children are different from what children want for themselves. So it's a fine line to balance between those two wants. And that's probably why I'm not as drawn to pediatrics, because of all that dynamic and the skills required to do it. So I'm more drawn towards adults currently, and I haven't experienced psychosocial yet, but my next placement is in psychosocial, so I'll see afterwards.
Okay. All right. Should you aim to have around an 84% in the 3 prereqs as well as your senior level courses? Okay, so I can answer this one. For your prerequisites, it's just for completion. So it's just to make sure you've passed the course. And I honestly mean this, like it is just passing. So for myself, I actually didn't do too well in my anatomy. So I think I had like, I'm gonna be honest, like a 66 or something, nothing too impressive, but that was totally fine. They just checked to see if you completed it. So you can get my personal testament here. You're going to be okay if you didn't get and then you just have to pass. You just have to pass that. So yes, but I would try to go above the competitive average personally, just to feel more safe for your senior level courses. But if your whole average is like an 85, I would say combined with your work experience, you should be okay. But yeah, I would try to always do your best and just go above and beyond the competitive average just to be safe.
How many students are accepted in program each year? I believe they expanded the program this year. So yeah, more OTs,
so
because we need more OTs in BC. So currently they accept 64 students. I believe there's 8 international students and the rest are domestic, if I'm getting that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But in my year, we accepted 64 students, but unfortunately 5 international students couldn't make it in. So we have 59 students in my cohort. But I believe this year should have 64. And they have the new Northern cohort opening in UNBC. So that's more students. So
it's amazing.
I think in total there's 80 students now in OT programs. Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be so cool. I can't believe the Northern program is happening. It's amazing.
It's really cool, very exciting. We need more rural Northern OTs.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do a rural placement and just see what it's like. You have to be like the jack of all trades when you're like kind of like the only OT in the rural communities. It seems kind of fun. Okay, well, that's the next question here. Oh, do you get to specialize as an OT? This is a good question. And I would say yes, because you can choose a field. So say you're wanted to be in pediatrics, working with, I don't know, children with developmental coordination disorder. You can get very specific and be working with one population with a certain condition, and you can kind of hone that in and make that your expertise, and you can do research in that. Eunice can answer this better than me, but yeah, there are definitely opportunities to specialize and find your niche and just work in that.
No, I think you answered it really well, Zoe. There's definitely niches, and yeah, I think when you graduate, you learn all these general skills, but when you actually work in the workforce, you're really working with a specific population, and that's when you really specialize. When you learn on the job, because you can work in the NICU. That's very, very different compared to working with adults. So in that sense, you can specialize. And the last question I have here, what would you say is the hardest part about being an OT? That's a really good question. I think being an OT, it's difficult to advocate sometimes for yourself and for your clients just because I think we're still working on having OT being recognized more professionally in the healthcare system because we do use evidence-based practice and sometimes funding is hard to obtain. And I think it's challenging when you want to do all these things with your clients, but there's just not the funding available or the compassion in the system that you want that would provide the clients with these funding opportunities. So for example, like if a client really needs a certain wheelchair or really wants to go into long-term care, but they don't meet a certain requirement and you can't help them do that. So as an OT to figure out different adaptations or ways to work around that problem, or really have to practice our advocacy skills. A huge part of OT is just advocating for your clients and really seeing what they need and being able to express their needs to people who need to hear them. How about you, Chloe? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say, let me think. I'm just having a moment here. Oh my gosh, I'm finding the question again. Sorry, Leah sent me a message and I'm like, I read it and then I forgot. Where are we at here? What was the question again? Sorry.
What's the hardest part of being an OT?
Okay, I would say advocating for yourself and your profession. As you can tell, it's hard to explain what OT is and what we do. It's not like PT where you can be like, we focus on exercise and movement and getting people back to moving their bodies. Like we can do so many things. So it's really hard to explain and advocate for yourself. And even there's some health professionals who don't understand what we do. So yeah, I think that would be the hardest part, kind of advocating for OT and explaining it to people and getting people to understand the value of OT. Yeah, Eunice, you explained it so well.
No, which is why it's great you guys all came out today to learn more about OT because people need to know what OT is. And that's why Zoe and I are super passionate about sharing about OT with anyone who wants to listen. And I'll just quickly answer the last two questions. I know it's like close to 10. Did you guys apply to any other schools? I only applied to UBC because I did not want to go out of BC. That's my own reason. How about you, Zoe?
I applied to a lot of schools, like as many schools as I could. But looking back, I probably should have just kept it a little bit smaller. But I did apply to like U of T, McMaster, Western, Queens, U of A. Yeah, so the list was pretty big. I did end up getting into Western, but I was really lucky to get into UBC, and I'm firm. I stand by my decision. UBC has been the best choice for me. Yeah.
Okay. Are UBC students given preference? No, I don't think there's any preference given at all. I think when they do interviews, when they talk about the actual scores that we all got in the OT interviews, they cover up the names and just look based on the answers you give and the scoring they did. So there's no bias at all towards UBC students.
Yeah. That being said, I think they do prioritize people who live in province. But I think I don't know if they changed this, but there was a limited amount of seats for people coming from outside of the province. It may have changed. Eunice, maybe you know. But I think there was a restricted amount of seats. I have a friend who's in the program who is from Alberta, and there were a limited amount of seats. So, and if you're not from BC, it could be more challenging, but maybe they changed it with the expansion of seats and the Northern program. I think that could change.
Oh, I actually don't know about that. So it's a good
question.
You can always email student services at UBC too. They're super friendly and they always answer every question so thoroughly and thoughtfully.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recognize it's almost 10 and I hope you guys all learned something about OT and hope we answered your questions as well as we could have, and hope I gave you a better sense of what OT is and why it's such a great profession out there. And Zoe and I really hope you guys really consider OT and maybe apply, and maybe we'll see you in the field sometime in the future.
Yes. Yeah, it
Thank
was
you.
so fun.
Okay, thanks for coming in, giving a talk, Eunice and Zoe. Everybody, I'll just send the quiz link in the chat. So I'll also put it on the website and probably in the Slack, and I'll try to put together like a document of online volunteering opportunities. So thanks, Eunice and Zoe again. It was a great talk, and see you all. The next session will be April 10, so I'll see you all on April 10.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to say too, if anybody wants to follow, I made an occupational therapy like student account. If you want to follow, it's called OT with Zoe. And I kind of post my experience with OT there. So if you're interested.
We'll follow
Yeah.
Zoe. She's great.
It's just for fun. But yeah, if you're curious. But thank you so much. This was so fun.
The next registration date will be around a week before, Danielle. Okay. So thank you. Thanks again. It was great. See you all later.
Okay.